who, unknown to Nikon, took existing Nikon film cameras like the F3 and added a quite separate and bulky digital storage unit, like in this DCS-100, which had to be worn over the shoulder. Later, the digital storage unit was incorporated or screwed into the film camera body, like here in this 1994 Kodak DCS-420, which was based on a Nikon N90 or N90's body. These Kodak cameras could cost up to $30,000 depending on the model. The DCS-420, for example, had a 1.5 megapixel sensor and a 2.6 times crop sensor multiplication factor. A flagship model of DCS-460 had 6 megapixel sensor and a 1.3 multiplication factor. This style even continued into later models, like this 1999 Kodak Professional DCS-330, based on a Nikon APS-4 format Pronia 61, a film camera, and this camera had a 1.9 times conversion factor. Here you can see the original camera, and then the box is attached down below. I'll leave a link below to the excellent MIR site for fuller descriptions of these Kodak cameras. Launch of the fully integrated Nikon E2 and Fujix DS505 in 1994-5 at a reported price point of $13,995, often discounted to $12,000 although still costing more than some cars at the time, did change the professional market. Other models followed, some at lower prices. However, at the end of the video, I'll show you the camera they developed into that set the trend for the whole professional digital SLR market going forward, and possibly led to the demise of Kodak in this market. As I have many more cameras to share with you, and this is a new channel, I hope I can get your support by liking and subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications. So let's take a more detailed look at this rare and, to my mind, fascinating and important Nikon E2 Digital SLR. By today's standards, the camera is large and heavy, weighing in at 2.03 kilograms or 4.47 pounds when you include a battery and this 50mm lens. It is solidly built and feels surprisingly good in the hands, but possibly not for too long. Nikon described the camera as easy to handle as your 35mm film-based SLR Nikon, but digital, and this leads us to one of its key features. Although the 1.3 megapixel CCD sensor was small at 2/3 of an inch, there was no crop factor involved, unlike the Kodak cameras or even modern mirrorless cameras. This was achieved by a plethora of mirrors and lenses known as the reduction optical system. So, adding a 50mm lens, such as the one in the video, yielded a 50mm field of view, and photographers could use a wide selection of existing f-mount lenses seamlessly, just like on their 35mm film cameras. This was a remarkable feature on these Nikon and Fuji cameras. To my mind, it was never repeated by them or other manufacturers with sensors smaller than full frame, which always had a crop factor multiplier. The reduction optical system, however, had some consequences, like the added bulk and weight. In addition, light is lost in transit through all the lenses to the 2/3 inch CCD sensor. So even though the lens I had on the camera there was a 1.8, it will become an f6.7 on the Nikon E2, and apertures ranged from 6.7 up to f38. This may not be a bad thing, as the lowest ISO sensitivity on the camera is actually 800, and there's only one other choice, which is 1600 or 3200 on upgraded E2N or the Fujix DSC515 model. Images are stored on a PCMCIA card like the one shown. It goes in the back of the camera, where you'll realize there is no LCD to view images. So in many ways the operation of the camera is initially like a film camera, but you were able to visualize the images on a linked TV or computer screen and modem them back to the office or show your subject or client in the studio. The camera was supplied with a 15 megabit, yes, 15 megabit PCMCIA card, which stored 84 basic mode images, but only 5 54 megabyte TIFFs. The card I had is bigger at 40 megabytes, and it shows on the LCD here that I have space for 60 fine JPEGs, but only 15 TIFFs. I have tried larger capacity cards, but they haven't worked for me. Others have reported getting 520 megabit cards to work. The camera apparently has addressable 128 megabits to play with, but much of that is taken up by the camera, leaving little available for the card. I don't have a card reader, but they are available. I found an old Sony laptop that accepted the card and downloaded the uncompressed TIFFs or JPEGs that are designated basic, normal or fine. Once the PCMCIA card is inserted, you can format it by simply simultaneously pressing these two buttons, just for 1 second. The LCD then shows that you have a number 1 at the start and the number of images that can be taken. If you are a Nikon DSLR user, then the controls will almost be familiar to you, and I found it relatively easy to get to grips with them. Like the film cameras with no rear LCD, there is no menu to dive into. Hooray! And everything is controlled by buttons and dials and visualized on the small LCD screen on the top of the camera. The camera is switched on here, but only stays active for a short period if nothing is done. The dial moving from lock to single, then continuous shooting at just 1 frame per second. SD is for sending digital data, and the playback mode, not on the camera but linked to a TV monitor, so you could see your images. On here you can see the mode, battery, aperture, shutter speed, lock indicator, frames remaining, exposure compensation, metering system, image quality, frame shot, sensitivity and white balance mode. It does have auto ISO. On the top here you can set the mode, the blue dot indicating to use the blue command dial to change from the familiar P, S, A or M modes. A little aside here, a lens has to be attached to the camera to operate this, which foxed me for a while, and I thought the mode wasn't working, but in hindsight this makes sense. There's a metering system button for center weighted, 70-30 metering or spot. Sensitivity can be set for a standard 800 ISO or high, which is 1600 and 3200 on later models. Then behind this door we have, and again denoted in blue to show to use the command dial to change, the quality from basic, normal, fine to high, depending on the compression or lack of it. The non-compressed files are in a TIFF format, the others as JPEGs, and they're tiny, about 670 kilobytes in fine mode. We then have the white balance, with the usual range of incandescent, fluorescent, fine, cloudy shade and auto, with no flash mode on this, but was present on the upgraded E2N, E2NS. Indeed, Nikon claims to have developed sophisticated algorithms for this. You can set the date, send data, erase the last image or format the card. And we also have the usual AE lock and AF lock buttons. Some other features that you might want to be aware of. When used with a Nikon speedlight like this SB260, you can get a spectrum of options including matrix balance, TTL, fill flash to rear curtain sync and wireless multi-flash options as well as links to studio flash. When I acquired the Nikon E2, it came with no batteries or charger, and obviously that was very frustrating, and I searched everywhere for them, eventually finding a set of two and a charger in Hungary. Unfortunately, they only knew the value and charged a pretty penny for them, but I just had to have them to see whether this camera worked or not. Then a couple of weeks later, I found a Fujix DS515 and bought it, and it came with a non-functioning battery, a charger and a dummy battery DC mains unit. However, as the battery was dead, I managed to get it resold. When shooting with the camera, I set the mode and usually operate in manual, in which case the front command dial changes aperture and the main command dial shutter speed. In aperture priority, the main command dial now changes the aperture. The camera has got phase detection autofocus, and I think this is quite snappy for its age. I've not really tested the continuous focus. Exposure and white balance set to auto seem to work well. The shutter is noisy but satisfying. I have been using an autofocus 50mm 1.4D lens, and that has worked really fine. And so does a Nikon DX AFS 35mm 1.G, a more modern lens, which because of the small sensor and the optics renders as a 35mm with full 35mm full coverage. Here's a few JPEG images straight out of the camera. In conclusion, could I recommend this camera? It's a no unless you're a collector, but in an odd way I really like it. Handling a more than 30-year-old piece of history that shaped digital cameras is satisfying, and out and about it's impressive. Few if any will know what it is. Although there were small upgrades in 1998, it didn't last that long, because in 1999 Nikon came out with the 2.74 megapixel Nikon D1. This is the D1X, with integrated control of metering, white balance and tone compression, a 4.5 frames per second shooting speed for 21 shots, at a top shutter speed of 1/16,000th of a second and a flash sync up to 1/500th second. It was a revolution at the time and really provided the look that all DSLRs have today. I will have a video on this coming out soon. So thanks for joining me on this Digicam adventure. If you enjoyed this look into early digital history, give me a thumbs up, subscribe and ring that bell. And let me know what you thought of these cameras and if there's a classic Digicam I should feature next. Maybe I already have it.